Hello and welcome to the beginning of a 10-part mini-series. My name's Adam Duffy, I'm a partner here at Meridian. I've been with business for 7 years, and in that time I've been quite an active investor myself. I've invested in 10 properties. Now, certainly learned a lot of lessons along the way, made a lot of mistakes, and that's what this is really about. It's about getting down to the nuts and bolts and giving back as much as possible. I've found the best way to learn as an investor is to learn from other people's mistakes and learn from what they've done right. It's the cheapest way to learn. So that's what this series is about. I'm going to break it down into 10 concise steps that can be very useful whether you're a first-time investor or a more experienced investor. We're going to use real examples of properties I've invested in, what went right, what went wrong, and try and give back as much as possible throughout this series. So we're going to start with step 1 today, and we'll get into that now. Okay, step number 1. It's all about overcoming fear and being very clear on what your goals are. Two very important parts of the process and part of this first step. So I think fear is one of the main things that holds a lot of people back, certainly from starting the investment journey, whatever that may be, whatever path they want to go down. Overcoming fear is one of the more important things you need to do. Now, the best way to overcome fear is really just get educated in the basics of the topic that you're looking at. Okay, so whether you're looking at investing in shares, property, gold, or you're not quite sure yet, the best thing to do is get a bit of education. There's a lot of good books out there for you to start. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is one of the best ways to start on the very basics. There's a great book on the Meridian website that you can get a link to that'll pop up here. And also Warren Buffett has a lot of great books that I learn a lot from personally. So once you've got a bit of an understanding about the basics, it then can make it a lot easier to start in that first step and get into the right direction that you want to go down. Now, the direction and path that you want to go down is really going to depend on what your end goals are. So that's the next thing that you need to be very clear about. Through my reading and experience and what I've learned is that the most successful people that I've met and read about have always been very clear about their short, medium, and long-term goals. And they always referred back to these goals. No matter how successful they were, they still had these goals, still referred back to them. Once you've got an idea about what your end goal is, it'll make it a lot easier to decide on what's the right path to get there. So personally, I decided that property is the asset class for me. That's why we're doing a 10-part series on it today. Actually, I started with shares, but what I found pretty quickly was I was doing quite well, getting a decent return on my investments, but it just wasn't going to get me quick enough to what my end goal was. Now, the main reason that property is the asset class for me is not because I like the way a room can be designed or how a house or an apartment looks. It's all about my long-term strategy, which is all about leverage and long-term. These are the two things I always focus on and will continue to for a very long time. So, first of all, what does leverage mean? Well, leverage is all about being able to use a small amount of money called a deposit. For me, I started with $25,000. I've now invested in 10 properties. But I started with that deposit, and leverage is being able to start with a deposit and borrow a large amount of money from a lending institution like a bank and invest into a large asset. Now, if that large asset grows at even a small percentage, you'll find that that's actually quite a big return on your investment, on your deposit. So this is the main reason why I like property. Now, when you combine that concept of leverage with long term, it takes a lot of risk out of it in my perspective. Now, what I learned a lot of when I was reading was that one of the silliest ways you can invest, and I still see it to this day, is people reading news articles and media releases and making their investment decisions on the day based on that, what they're reading, or even on the week based on what they're reading. If people invest like that, what you're going to find a lot of the time is that people are going to be buying at the wrong time in the market, and they're actually going to be selling at the wrong time in the market. They're going to be selling when everyone else is selling, and they're going to be buying when everyone else is buying. And whether that's shares, whether that's property, whether that's anything, you're going to find that's the incorrect way to invest. You need to invest counter-cyclically. What that means is that markets are always going to be going through cycles, ups and downs all the way along the way. But if you keep a long-term perspective and you maintain that perspective and that strategy till the end, you're going to find you get a lot stronger results by being able to ride out the ups and the downs, but always keeping a consistent process of maintaining that it's a long-term strategy for you for not only your first investment, but for the investments that you build your portfolio with. That's always a strategy that I've focused on and will continue to focus on for a long time to come. So once you've got a bit of education, a bit more comfort, a bit more direction about what your goals are, what you're looking to achieve long term, I assure you it's going to make it a lot easier to get started. And that's what you should do. You should get started. I'm sure you've heard it before, should have started 10 years ago, I should have started 5 years ago. Don't let that be you in another 12 months time. Make sure you do get started and clear on what you're looking to achieve. So that's step one, guys. We've got 9 more to go, and let me assure you it's going to get a lot more detailed and useful and important than that. We're going to get right down to the nuts and bolts and things. So stay with me. Step 2 next.